The steak was medium rare. The candle flickered. His fork moved without sound. Mine didn't move at all. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't anything. And somehow, that made it worse. We were two people sharing a table, but not a moment, not a glance, not a breath between us. Just that awful kind of quiet that pretends to be peaceful, but feels more like something sacred has already gone. There is a kind of silence that doesn't mean peace, only distance too deep to name. That quote, I didn't read it in a book, I felt it. One Tuesday night in our small kitchen while the microwave hummed and no one said anything for 27 minutes straight, I counted. He looked at me once, or maybe past me, and I remember thinking, if I spoke right now, would it matter? That's the kind of silence I'm talking about. The one that feels like being underwater. Not drowning, not gasping, just slowly running out of air. And the worst part? You're not even sure if they notice you sinking. We used to be full of noise. We used to laugh mid-bite, argue about sauces, sing bad 90s songs with spoons as microphones. Now we eat, we chew, we rinse, and call it love. But it's not. It's muscle memory dressed in routine. It's, how was your day and did you take the trash out? It's existing side by side, while our hearts moved across the street without telling us. I remember once I dropped a plate by accident. It shattered, loud and sharp. And for a split second, I felt relief, because finally, something made a sound. Isn't that sad? I felt alive, because something broke. You don't talk about it at first. You tell yourself, we're both just tired. Work's been heavy. This is what comfort looks like. But deep down, there's a sinking feeling you can't name. It's not anger. It's not betrayal. It's erosion. One slow, quiet, invisible collapse at a time. He still kisses my forehead, still says goodnight, still asks if I want tea, but it's not warmth. It's autopilot, like a song on a repeat we forgot we're listening to. And maybe I'm not innocent either. I stopped asking deeper questions, stopped saying I missed him, in case he didn't say it back. Because silence, after all, doesn't hurt as much when you expect it. We sleep in the same bed, his back to me, my eyes open, watching ceiling shadows shift with streetlight patterns. There's no storm, no slammed doors, no big dramatic scene, just two people, gently disappearing from each other in real time. And the house still holds our laughter in the walls, but the echoes are faint, almost embarrassed to still exist. Sometimes I whisper things just to remember how my voice sounds in that room. Not to him, just to the air. Is that strange? Maybe, but it's how I know I haven't gone completely invisible. And yet, I love him. I think he still loves me, but we're trapped in a loop of polite coexistence, afraid to say what we both know. This silence has teeth. It's not passive. It bites at your sense of self, makes you wonder, did I do something wrong? Did I not show up enough? Am I not worthy of noise anymore? You start to miss even the arguments, because at least that meant someone still cared enough to speak. But now we're just careful with each other, like we're both afraid the truth might make the whole thing collapse. But I'll tell you something real. Love doesn't end with yelling. It ends in silence, in long pauses, in avoided eyes, in dinners where salt is passed, but not feelings. Tonight, the candle flickered like always. He looked up once, smiled faintly, and went back to eating. And I thought, not for the first time, this is the loneliest I've ever felt while being loved. And it wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he didn't know I was fading. And I didn't know how to ask him to see me again. So I just sat there, across the table inside the quiet, listening to the sound of love falling asleep. Not all silence is shared. Some of it is solitary, even with someone beside you. He brushed past me this morning. His shoulder touched mine, warm, alive, but it felt like nothing. That's the part no one warns you about, that you can be touched and still untouched, seen and still invisible. We live in the same space, use the same toothpaste, buy the same almond milk, but I don't think he's really looked at me in weeks. Not looked, like scanned. Not checked, like noticed. Looked, the kind that says, I see you. Not as someone who folded his socks, but as someone who still feels like home. We used to fall asleep mid-conversation. Now we fall asleep mid-silence. And it's not because we're tired. It's because the space between us got too wide to fill with words. I hear us in the way we say nothing, in the way we choose the safe topics, groceries, work, traffic. He tells me about meetings. I nod. I tell him I might order a new rug. He nods. It's choreography. And we're dancers who forgot the music. We used to spill everything. Random 2 a.m. thoughts, old childhood stories, dreams we were too scared to write down. Now, we don't even ask how the other one slept, because we already know the answer. Fine. But fine is never the truth. Fine is the pause before the real sentence we're too afraid to say. I'm lonely. I don't feel chosen anymore. Do you still want this? I had that thought last night, while brushing my teeth. He walked in. We stood side by side in the mirror, reflected, but not connected. He hummed a song. I used to love that. Now it felt like a radio playing in someone else's car. I caught my own eyes in the mirror, and they didn't look like mine. They looked like someone trying not to cry in front of someone who'd stopped noticing. So I rinsed. I smiled. I turned off the light. And he said, night. That one word, night, it used to be followed by a kiss, a pause, a moment. Now it's just punctuation at the end of a routine. I remember the first time I almost said something. Something real, something soft. I was going to say, I miss you. Simple, right? But my voice caught, and I swallowed the words because something in me whispered, what if he doesn't say it back? So I stayed silent, and silence became our shared language. But here's the truth most people don't say. You don't lose someone when they walk out. You lose them in 100 quiet moments when they stay, but stop showing up. And you stay too, because it doesn't hurt enough to leave, but it doesn't feel enough to stay. I caught his eyes this morning, just for a second, while he was pouring coffee. There was something there, a flicker, a soft question, like maybe he still wonders if I notice him too. But neither of us said anything, because words are dangerous now. Because love, real, vulnerable, hard on the floor love, requires presence. And presence is harder than proximity. We're so close, but so far away it echoes. It echoes when we eat, when we fold laundry, when we sit in the same room, laughing at different parts of the same show. Sometimes I wonder, do we still love each other? Or are we just afraid of starting over? Because starting over sounds exhausting. And this silence, at least it's familiar. There's a comfort in repetition, even when it hurts. Same table, same candle, same pauses. But each one feels just a little bit heavier than the last. And I keep thinking back to that dinner. The one I told you about. Same room, same man. But that silence used to be a question. Now it's an answer. I think he feels it too. But he doesn't say it, and I don't ask. Because we both learned to treat love like something fragile, like glass already cracked. And maybe it is. Maybe we're both hoping the other person makes the first move, to reach, to speak, to say, I miss us. But no one does. So we go another day, another dinner, another silence. And the quiet between us, it's no longer awkward, it's expected. How long can love survive without being heard? I ask that now. Not as a warning, but as someone still sitting at the table, still waiting, because even when the words are gone, the eyes still look. And maybe, just maybe, they're still looking for a reason to stay. Maybe we're not really silent with each other. Maybe we just forgot how to speak to ourselves. And the silence leaked out. The thought came while brushing my teeth. Two people, one sink, two mirrors, but somehow not a single reflection felt whole. His face was focused, mine blank, like we were both studying something we didn't want to admit we'd lost. And it made me wonder, have I been quiet with him, or have I just forgotten how to be honest with myself? Because somewhere in between holding peace and holding back, I stopped knowing which version of me was real. The strong one, the quiet one, the easy one. I wore them all, but none of them felt like skin, more like costumes, designed to keep things easy, safe, predictable. And he had his versions too. The calm one, the collected one, the man who never overreacts. But maybe underreacting was the real one. Maybe we both learned to say less so the other wouldn't run. And in doing that, we forgot how to stay. The silence wasn't born out of distance. It came from within. Little fears, little edits, little moments of, that's not worth mentioning. And when you do that long enough, you build a whole relationship on half-truths. I used to want to tell him everything, the weird thoughts, the scared ones, even the jealous ones I hated admitting out loud. But over time, I replaced them with updates, logistics, check-ins. How's work? What time's your flight? Don't forget your umbrella. Love turned into weather reports. But the storm? It was inside me. I think we both assumed silence was peace, but it wasn't. It was protection. A shield made of niceties, and under it, all the words we swallowed because we didn't want to be too much, too emotional, too needy, too intense. So we performed, each of us holding mirrors fogged on both sides, unable to see ourselves and unable to see each other. I remember one night he asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just tired." I wasn't lying, but I wasn't honest either, because the real answer was, I don't feel like me anymore, and I don't know how to come back. But that kind of sentence, where does it even land? Who catches it? What if it drops and breaks the little quiet we still have left? So I smiled, brushed it off, and went back to pretending peace. But peace without expression isn't peace. It's just silence dressed up for company. You know what I've learned? Sometimes silence starts as survival. We think we're protecting the love by keeping it smooth. No rough edges, no sharp turns, no heavy confessions. But what we're really doing is building a home with no doors, no way out, no way in. And one day you wake up next to someone who used to feel like everything, and now feels like a version of yourself you forgot you were playing. I saw it last week, in his eyes. He looked at me during lunch, just a second too long. Like he almost said something. Like he almost remembered the version of me who used to cry at documentaries and get excited over new candles and talk too much in movie theaters. But he said nothing, and I said nothing. And the silence, it grew roots. I don't think either of us meant for this to happen. But love doesn't disappear because of bad intentions. It disappears because we stop showing ourselves. Little by little, I became someone who only expressed joy when it was convenient. Pain only when it was digestible. And confusion? Never. And if I can't be honest with me, how can I expect him to feel safe showing himself? So we sit in this unspoken truce, 2 mirrors, 2 reflections, fogged. And here's the quiet part that stings. I still love him, not out of nostalgia, not out of fear, but from somewhere still tender. But even love needs air. Even love needs sound. Maybe it's not about talking more. Maybe it's about being more real. Even if the real is messy. Even if it shakes things. Even if it risks the comfort. Because comfort without honesty is just a warm blanket over a fading flame. I walked past him this morning. He was tying his shoes. I stood for a second, opened my mouth, closed it. But in the mirror for just a second I saw me. The real me. Not polished, not convenient, just present. Maybe that's a start. The mirror didn't crack. It just stopped reflecting anything I recognized. And maybe that's the quietest kind of grief. When things don't break, they just disappear. No slammed doors, no last words, no final kiss that lingered a little too long. Just 100 soft moments that slowly stopped meaning anything. I remember sitting next to him on the couch. Same cushions, same blanket, same show, but different silence. Not the comforting kind in the we're so close we don't have to speak kind. This was the other one. The kind that hums in your chest like a warning. The kind that makes you check your phone more than his eyes. I scrolled. He scrolled. We both smiled at different things on different screens. And in a room full of Wi-Fi, we couldn't connect. I wanted to say something. I feel lonely. Or even just, can you hold my hand? But instead I said, do you want popcorn? And he said, nah, I'm good. And that was our moment for the night. There was a time we used to pause the movie, just to talk about one line. Now we don't even pause to feel. I sat there that night and realized I've had deeper conversations with strangers in comment sections than I've had with the person beside me. And that truth hit me harder than I expected. You start asking yourself questions you're scared to answer. When did I stop being someone he was curious about? When did "how was your day" become a checklist instead of a door? There's this ache, this specific ache of saying I'm fine when you're not. Not because you're lying, but because telling the truth feels like asking for too much. So you shrink. Not all at once, just a little every day. You speak less, laugh softer, hope quieter, until one day you don't even recognize the version of you that still stays. And that's the part no one sees. Because from the outside, it looks okay. You're still together, still having dinners, still smiling in photos. But that table, it remembers. It remembers the last time you held hands during dessert, the last time you laughed until you cried over a dumb joke, the last time silence meant comfort, not confusion. Now the table just watches, plates touched, food half finished, words avoided. And I've learned something strange. You can love someone and still feel like you're mourning them. Not because they're gone, but because the version of them who used to see you stopped showing up. I went through our old texts the other day, not the recent ones, not the "do you need anything from the store" ones. I mean the real ones, from when we still said "I miss you" without needing a reason. There was a warmth in our words back then, even in the typos, even in the late night half sentences. Now our texts are perfectly punctuated, but hollow. And that makes me wonder, at what point does emotional distance become its own kind of betrayal? Not the kind you confront, the kind you carry, like a heavy jacket you forget to take off indoors. And still, we stay because there's no crime, no evidence, just erosion. One skipped question, one ignored glance, one moment where you almost said, "I miss us," but didn't. You ever say good night and realize the room didn't feel any different after? That's how it's been. And the quiet is no longer shocking. It's familiar. And that familiarity is the most dangerous part. Because when you get used to not being seen, you stop asking to be. So I sit beside him, sometimes closer to him than ever physically. But emotionally, miles. I could reach for his hand right now. Nothing's stopping me, but something is. And I don't know what. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's fear, or maybe it's that awful thought. What if he doesn't reach back? So I don't, and neither does he. And the couch remains shared, but not felt. Like two guests waiting in the same room for different appointments. And maybe this isn't a breakup. Maybe this is just the slow undoing of two people who forgot how to meet in the middle. But either way, there's grief here. Grief that doesn't cry, grief that doesn't scream, grief that doesn't leave a mess. It just sits like dust on the photo frame, like old coffee gone cold, like a love letter you never send because you don't know where to start. Maybe silence wasn't the absence of love. Maybe it was a cry love didn't know how to speak. That line didn't come from a book. It came from one night, when he quietly handed me a cup of tea I didn't ask for. No words, no eye contact, just the gentle clink of porcelain on my bedside table. And I almost cried, not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me, maybe he was still trying, just in a language I didn't know how to hear anymore. There were always small things, too small to fix the ache, but maybe not meant to. Like when he made sure my phone was charging, or when he memorized how I take my eggs, like how he always let me pick the movie, even though I always fell asleep halfway through. None of it loud, none of it poetic, just quiet offerings. Tiny bridges built with hands that didn't know how to hold grief. And maybe I missed them because I was too busy looking for the version of love that talks like me. I needed words. He offered presence. I wanted to be seen. He tried not to look too hard, maybe afraid he'd find pain he couldn't fix. We were two people, both hurting, both showing up, just not in the same way. And I wonder now, how many moments of love have I overlooked because they didn't sound like mine? Because they weren't dressed in deep talks and long eye contact? Because they didn't look like how I wanted to be loved? He once stayed up all night when I had a fever, didn't touch me, didn't say anything profound, just refilled the water, adjusted the fan, and sat at the edge of the bed like a lighthouse. I didn't thank him. I barely remembered it the next day, but now I do. Now I remember all the clumsy ways he tried to stay, even when the language between us had started to crumble. And maybe that's what silence really is sometimes. Not absence, but fear. Not indifference, but unfamiliarity. Like being underwater, waving, or not because you're fine, but because you're hoping they see you before you run out of breath. He waved too, in his own way. When he texted, "Drive safe," instead of "I love you." When he played our song without saying a word. When he still made me coffee even after I stopped drinking it. I think we both thought the other stopped caring, but maybe we just didn't know how to show it anymore. And no one ever teaches you that part. How even love can get lost in translation. I used to believe silence was a punishment, a wall, a way to keep someone out. But now I wonder, what if it's just where we put the feelings we don't know how to say? Maybe silence is grief in slow motion. Maybe it's love holding its breath. And I'm not saying it's okay, or that it didn't hurt. I just think sometimes people don't stay quiet because they don't care. They stay quiet because they care too much and don't know how to say the wrong thing less painfully than saying nothing at all. There's a memory that won't leave me. One night I was crying quietly, in the kitchen. He walked in, didn't say a word, just opened the fridge, grabbed the milk, and poured it into the mug I always used. It was stupid. It was nothing. But that mug, that specific one, he remembered. And I think I felt loved in that moment more than I had in weeks, even if he didn't hold me, even if he didn't ask why I was crying, because he knew, and he showed up in the only way he could. Maybe that's what love becomes when it's tired, when it's bruised, when it's still fighting but doesn't know where the enemy is. It becomes small things, unspoken things, half efforts that are actually full-hearted but quietly scared. And I know now he didn't ignore me. He just didn't know how to reach me anymore. And I didn't know how to slow down enough to see that maybe he already was. So here I am, sitting with the silence, not running from it, not blaming it, just noticing. Maybe it wasn't empty after all. Maybe it was just holding too much. Maybe silence is where pain goes when it's afraid of being misunderstood. Maybe it meant something. Maybe it always did. Even the quietest hearts long to be heard. The candle was lit again. Same dinner table, same seats. But something had changed. Not the lighting, not the food, just the air. It didn't feel as heavy. He passed the salt. I passed the salad. And then, in between a bite and a breath, I heard it. I miss us. Soft, almost embarrassed, but real. It wasn't a speech, no eye contact, just a small sentence that cracked something open. And I didn't say, I miss you too, right away. I didn't even nod. I just let the words sit between us like steam rising from a warm mug. Slow, visible, fragile. Because sometimes it's not about what you say next. It's about letting something finally be said. The silence didn't disappear. It just shifted. It became less about fear and more about pause, more about space to breathe, together. Later that night, he sat at the edge of the bed like he used to. Same spot, same man. But this time I said something first. I've been quiet because I was scared. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just honest. He didn't interrupt, didn't fix it, didn't make it a thing. He just stayed, like stillness could hold love again. And maybe that's all we ever needed. Not the perfect words, not the grand apologies, just a window, cracked open, letting something new in. There was still quiet, still long pauses, but now they weren't filled with questions. They were filled with listening. You know that mirror? The fogged one from the bathroom? It cleared, not all at once, but enough to see ourselves again. Not fully formed, not back to before, just real. I looked at him brushing his teeth. He glanced at me, held the glance, and smiled. Not the polite one, the real one, the one that knew. And in that moment, I realized, love doesn't always come back loud. Sometimes it knocks gently. Sometimes it waits for you to notice the cup of tea, the playlist left playing, the silence that isn't empty anymore. Maybe it was never about who stopped talking first. Maybe it was about who decided to listen differently. And I know we're not fixed. I don't even want fixed. I just want present. I want real, because silence doesn't have to be the end. Sometimes it's just the part where breath happens before truth is spoken. And this time we both spoke. Little things like, I got scared. I thought I lost you. I didn't know how to say I was still here. We didn't raise our voices. We didn't cry. We just let the words come like dawn, like something returning, like forgiveness with no announcement. And it reminded me, even in quiet love, you're still allowed to begin again. The gestures from before, they landed now. The cup of tea, the charging cable, the seat he always warmed on my side of the couch. They weren't lost anymore. They meant something again, because now I could say, I see it. I felt it. Thank you. This isn't a love story with a bow. No dramatic kiss in the rain. No sudden fix. It's a still room. Two people, same table, same candle, and one sentence that starts the next chapter. Because this time, the silence didn't end the story. It opened it. If this story made you feel something, anything, then maybe your silence had a voice too. And if you're still sitting in a quiet room, waiting for someone to notice you, this is me saying gently, I see you. You're not alone. You never were. If you're ready to start speaking again, even in whispers, stay with us. Subscribe if you need more stories like this one. Share it with someone who's been quiet for too long, and leave a comment. Not because you have answers, but because maybe someone out there is waiting to hear your truth too. Until next time, may your silence be soft and your voice finally heard.